The moment everything fell apart was almost invisible. There was no crisis alert, no sudden announcement, no emergency press briefing. Instead, the collapse began with a simple question that revealed the truth behind weeks of diplomatic buildup. A truth nobody wanted to admit. The peace plan that was supposed to calm the war was never solid. The cracks appeared instantly, spreading through Washington, Europe, and Kyiv like a silent shockwave. And within hours, the plan that world leaders had carefully presented looked more like a political accident than a strategy. It started with President Trump. When asked if the proposal sent to Ukraine was his final offer, he did not hesitate. He said no. He said the war should have ended long ago. He said the plan was not finished. Those comments were short, but they set off a chain reaction that nobody could stop. Because if the president himself said the plan was not final, then what exactly had Ukraine received? And why did so many officials act like the entire document was settled? That question opened the door to something even bigger. The same day, a group of senators appeared before the press. They looked uneasy, and their tone made it clear they were not speaking casually. They said the Secretary of State had phoned them and told them something remarkable. According to their statement, the document was not an American creation. They said the United States did not write it, did not originate it, and did not even introduce it voluntarily. They said the document had been delivered to an American representative by an outside party, and more importantly, they said the structure looked Russian. The effect was immediate. Analysts around the world began examining the leaked pages. They noticed the way certain legal terms were arranged. They noticed phrasing not commonly used in Western diplomacy. They noticed patterns that often appear in Russian negotiating texts. Suddenly, the question was not about what the plan said. The question became, who wrote it? Meanwhile, as all of this was unfolding, the Secretary of State was literally traveling to Switzerland to present the plan to allies. He was en route to a negotiation based on a document that his own senators now believe came from Moscow. One of the strangest diplomatic contradictions in recent memory was happening in real time. The State Department finally stepped in. They released a direct message saying the senators were wrong. They claimed the plan was written inside the United States. They claimed it included ideas from both Ukraine and Russia. They insisted the government was fully in control of the initiative. But their explanation did not stop the confusion. It made it worse. Minutes later, the Secretary of State issued a personal statement. He repeated that the plan was American, but he added something new. He said the proposal was shaped by input from the Russian side. He said Ukraine's contribution came from earlier discussions, not from writing the 28 points. In other words, Ukraine did not help write the version it received. That detail changed everything. It explained why Ukraine's president had given a tense late-night speech. In that speech, he said he had to choose between national pride and loyalty to an ally. He did not say who the ally was, but it was obvious. Kyiv had not been included in writing the plan. Kyiv was expected to accept a proposal influenced by Russia. Kyiv had been placed in a position where rejecting the offer could isolate them diplomatically, while accepting it could undermine their independence. This realization triggered a new wave of questions. Why did the document resemble Russian legal formatting? Why did it appear within days of a well-known Russian propagandist visiting the United States? Why were senators convinced it was not American? And why did the State Department have to correct members of its own government? The most important question, however, revealed itself slowly. Why was the West arguing over the authorship of a peace plan when Russia had no intention of accepting any peace at all? While Washington tried to correct itself and Europe tried to stay calm, Russia did not hesitate to express its real position. A senior member of the Russian parliament said clearly that Russia would not accept any Western-designed agreement. He said the only acceptable outcome was Ukraine's capitulation. He said lasting peace would come only through Russia's victory. He said anything less would simply delay the next war. He also pointed out that even a smaller, weakened Ukraine would pose a threat to Russia if supported by Western nations. These statements were not hidden, they were not whispered, they were broadcast inside Russia. They made one thing clear: Moscow sees negotiations as a battlefield, and Russia enters negotiations only when it benefits them. not Ukraine. The West, on the other hand, kept acting as if Russia wanted a compromise. That miscalculation is at the heart of the current collapse. Russia sees the war as an opportunity to eliminate Ukrainian independence. The West sees the war as a problem that needs managing. Those two visions cannot coexist. The confusion inside the United States only helped Russia. Different American officials gave different messages. Some reports claimed the U.S. was pressuring Ukraine to sign the plan. Other reports called it misinformation spread by Russian agents. It became impossible to know what was real and what was not. And in that environment, uncertainty becomes a weapon. Russia thrives in uncertainty. When alliances weaken, Russia tightens its grip. When political debates slow Western decisions, Russia speeds up its operations. When trust between partners falters, Russia pushes harder. That is why the Kremlin is refusing to negotiate, because they believe time is their greatest ally. From their perspective, Ukraine is slowly running out of ammunition. Western economies are growing tired of the costs. Political disagreements in the United States create unpredictable gaps in support. The Kremlin believes that if it waits long enough, Western unity will collapse. And they are confident that Ukraine cannot withstand the pressure forever. Changing that calculation requires something major. Either the United States needs to send a clear signal that its support will remain stable no matter what happens in domestic politics, or Europe needs to take an even larger role proving that Russia cannot simply outlast American uncertainty. Without one of these changes, no negotiation will lead to a real peace. The diplomatic breakdown overshadowed a moment of humanity that should have been the headline of the week. A group of Ukrainian political prisoners was released from Belarus after negotiations. Among them was a young woman who had spent months in captivity. When guards told her she was being moved, she believed she was being taken into a forest to be executed. Instead, she found herself in front of Ukrainian intelligence officers. When she realized she was safe, her shock and relief said everything about the stakes of the war. Her story was raw. It was painful. It was real. And it showed why Ukraine cannot accept a peace that leaves them vulnerable. The world also witnessed another symbolic moment at the G20 summit. Russian journalists attempted to enter a German press event and were turned away. They immediately accused Germany of censorship, but their outrage carried a heavy irony. Russia is one of the most hostile nations in the world toward independent journalism. Russian reporters who criticize the government risk arrest, exile, or worse. Their reaction at the G20 was not about press freedom. It was about creating another narrative of victimhood that Moscow uses to justify its actions. As the dust settles, one thing becomes obvious. The peace plan was doomed not because of its content, but because of the political landscape surrounding it. The West was not aligned. Ukraine was not involved. Russia was not interested. And the world was left watching a diplomatic collapse that could have been avoided. Now every government involved has to face an uncomfortable truth. Russia will not enter meaningful negotiations unless the West holds a united position. Ukraine cannot walk into a meeting without power behind its arguments. And the United States cannot manage a peace initiative if its own officials contradict each other in public. Whether the plan survives or is replaced with a new version does not matter. What matters is the message delivered by this failure. If the West wants to influence the future of this war, it must regain unity. If Ukraine wants a fair peace, it must negotiate from strength. And if Russia wants to exploit hesitation, it will continue to reject diplomacy until the cost of war becomes unbearable for everyone else. The next stage of this conflict will not be decided by the wording of a document. It will be decided by power, stability, and the willingness of Western governments to stand firm instead of waiting for the situation to resolve itself. We are an independent news channel. We speak freely, we investigate deeply, and we rely entirely on viewer support. Please like and subscribe to support our channel.